Thank you so very much. Right, so as we continue to look at the assignment brief, when we come further to page number 6, we have the scenario. This is the task scenario. Everyone is going to pass these units, okay? So this is the scenario. As a social care worker with responsibility for safeguarding work in your care setting, write an article with information on, these are the key areas: requirements for safeguarding in adult care, how public inquiries and serious failings inform practice in adult safeguarding, implementation of policies and procedures to support safeguarding in adult care, mental capacity and consent, the use and impact of restrictive practices, local systems for safeguarding children and young people, supporting safeguarding children and young people encountered in adult social care services, as set out in the tasks. So these are the tasks. So this is the scenario. You write in your capacity as a social care worker who has responsibility for safeguarding in your care setting. And everything that you write in this assignment is based on the learning outcomes that we have covered in the scenario. So the key thing to bear in mind is that you are writing this assignment in your capacity as a social care worker, okay, in an adult care setting. We have the various tasks. This assignment, like we said earlier on, is 7 learning outcomes. This is the longest unit we have. And we're going to have a number of sessions to complete it as has been scheduled. So
how many LOs are there in this unit?
7.
7 learning outcomes.
Yes.
So along with its subparts.
No, is this how do you call it? The assessment criteria is based on the 7 learning outcomes, but 2 learning outcomes, you would not write any assignment on it. Those are observations. So that's the good news there.
So that means 1.1 to 2. Whatever it is, we don't have to do the assignment on that.
No, you will do on those ones, but okay, I'll show you here. Can you all see the assignment brief?
Yeah.
So 1.1, 1.2, up to 1.7, we are going to write assignment.
Okay.
Essay report. Then 2.1, we write assignment. The rest of learning outcome 2, no writing. It's observation.
But from 4.1 again, it says essays and report.
Yes. So 3.1 to 3.6.
Okay.
It's all these ones. It's all observation.
Okay.
So you're not going to write anything here. All of this. That's some good news there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And 4.1 to 4.7, we are going to write reports or essay. Okay. Then 5.1 to 5.7, we are going to write report, essay. 6.1.
So I think in this unit, we will be needing many classes, isn't it? At least 2-3 classes.
Yeah, we'll have a number of sessions as has been scheduled. Yeah. So 6.1, we are writing. 7.1, no writing, it's observation. Okay. So that's the end of the assignment brief. So let's go now to our PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
One minute, please. All right, so this is a PowerPoint for our unit. The unit's title is Safeguarding in Adult Care, still under our course at NCFE Cash Level 5 Diploma in Leadership and Management for Adult Care. And we're looking today at adults safeguarding adults. So when we talk about safeguarding, what do you understand by safeguarding? Who can tell us what they understand by safeguarding? Yes, anybody?
Yeah, acting like a guard, or like a tool to safeguard maybe the interest of the adults in the adult sector.
Excuse me. I beg your pardon. Yes, as a safeguard to safeguard the interest of the adults in the sector. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so that is a helpful idea. Yes, any other? Safeguard. Yes, any other idea about safeguarding? So how about protection? So when we talk about protection, like child protection, what does that suggest to anybody?
Child protection?
Yes.
Child protection, like again, to protect their rights and to safeguard their interest in order to develop them, give them a full chance to develop and to give the opportunity to them to grow.
Okay. Yes, so just thank you, Nina, for your helpful inputs. So just as the name sounds, when it has to do with protection, we are protecting rights, we are protecting health, we are protecting the safety of the children and young people in our care. But in this case, in relation to safeguarding, we are safeguarding the rights, the privileges, the choice, and the well-being of the adults that are in our care. And that is very important because of some of the reasons that we're going to be looking at. And as health and social care professionals, if we fail to do that, we will be in trouble with the law. And the law governs everything that we do. Okay, so these are the learning outcomes that we're going to be covering. Can I have Sarah, please take the first 4 learning outcomes for us, and Nina will take the next 3.
Okay. Understand requirement for safeguarding in adult care. Understand how public inquiries and serious failings inform practice. Lead the implementation of policies and procedures to support safeguarding in adult care. Understand mental capacity and consent.
Good. Thank you. Nina, please. Is Nina with us? Okay, probably Nina is
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Understand mental capacity and consent.
Okay. Next
Understand
one.
the use and impact of restrictive practice. Understand local systems of safeguarding children and young people. Support safeguarding of children and young people encountered in an adult social care services.
Thank you very much. So these are the 7 learning outcomes that this unit covers. It's quite a very broad unit. And as someone who will be working in a managerial level, it's very important to understand all these key areas, to understand them, to know them, and to acquire the skills that will enable you to be able to manage a team of staff workers, care assistants, support workers, and other individuals, other professionals that you will be working with in your role. So let's go into some of the aims of this session. So by the end of this session, we will be looking at definitions of safeguarding. We will look at the key principles of safeguarding. We will identify the categories of abuse. So when we talk about abuse, what is abuse and what are the categories or types or kinds of abuse? We'll also try to recognize, we'll see how can we recognize and respond to suspected abuse. When you suspect that an adult is being abused in any of the various categories that we're going to look at, how would you be able to recognize that such and such a person is being abused or might be abused or might be going through abuse? We'll also look at the basics of Mental Capacity Act as a law. We'll look at the prevent strategy or its prevent agenda and its key principles. We'll also look at some case studies that we'll discuss. There is one whole resource on different case scenarios that I'll be sending to Nancy to be sent to you. We'll explore some of them in the course of time. That will help us see how important the issue of safeguarding is in health and social care. I think we are not muted, so please, can we be muted? When you want to speak, then you can kindly speak. Thank you very much for your understanding. So then we will also consider implications in practice, such as practice checklists, things that we need to look out for when we are working with adults. And then we'll also have questions and answers. So I'm going to start off, and then I'm going to involve you in taking us through the rest of the session because we are learning together. So just as Nina explained earlier on in an attempt to define safeguarding, safeguarding applies to adults. Child protection applies to children and young people. So when we use the word safeguarding, you are thinking about anyone from the age of 18 plus, an adult. Very, very important. So any adult, 18 plus, number one, three things are important. Number one, who has needs for care and support. They cannot care for themselves completely. They cannot support themselves completely. So they depend on care assistants or support workers or health and social care practitioners for their care. It may be personal care or support. Whether or not the local authority is meeting any of those needs. The most important thing is that this person is an adult and depends on health care workers for their care and support. That is one of the people who needs to be safeguarded. They come under the terminology vulnerable adults. Number two, an adult who is experiencing or is at risk of abuse or neglect is a vulnerable adult who needs to be safeguarded. So that's the second thing to look out for in defining safeguarding. If these things are not included in the definition is not complete. The person is experiencing or the person is at a risk of being abused or neglected. And the third thing in relation to safeguarding and vulnerable adults is an adult who, as a result of those care and support needs that they have, are unable or is unable to protect themselves from the risk of being abused or from experiencing abuse. So these three things are important. Number one, an adult who cannot care for themselves and support themselves, so they depend on the health and social care system or practitioners for their care and support. Number two, an adult who is experiencing abuse or is at risk of being abused or neglected. The third one He's an adult who is receiving the care and support, and because of the care and support needs they have, and they cannot protect themselves if they are being abused by the people who are supporting them or by their family. Is it clear enough for all of us, or do we have any question or contribution? You want to add something to it? That is fine. Or shall we proceed? Okay. Now, there are 6 key principles that underpin or that are foundational to safeguarding adults in the health and social care settings. The first one is called empowerment. The second one is called prevention. Third one is proportionality. Fourth one is protection. Fifth one is partnership. And the last one is accountability. How are these principles? Let's look at empowerment. Sarah, do you want to take us through empowerment?
Yeah. Empowerment, people being supported and encouraged to make their own decisions and informed consent.
Very good. So the person is being taken care of. They can't bath themselves. They can't wash themselves. They can't dress themselves. They are being taken care of. They are being supported to do all of that. However, they are empowered. They are encouraged to make their own decisions and informed consent. So for example, if I am, for example, I'm a support worker, okay, and I've come in to support Mr. James. Mr. James is in bed when I get there. I need to get Mr. James' consent that, Mr. James, I've come to help you have an assisted bath. Is that okay? Are you ready to have an assisted bath? Mr. James has to be able to give me his consent. Yes, I am. So can he support me out of bed? I can't force Mr. James to get out of bed and bath him. No. So they need to be empowered to be able to speak out in terms of making decisions and giving consent for things to be done for them and on their behalf. It's a principle. The same applies to our children. Sometimes we ask our children, what would you like to eat? And they have to tell us what they want to eat. And mom will ask them, oh, what would you like to eat? We have this, we have that, we have that. The child will say, okay, mommy, I'll eat this. Daddy, I'll eat this. Uncle, I'll eat this. So that's empowerment. They have the ability to voice out their concerns, their wishes, their likes, their dislikes, and their preferences. They choose the color of clothes they want to wear. They choose the flavor of drink they want to have, even ice cream, so it's very important. That's empowerment. And next one, Naina, please. So prevention, I think Naina is muted. Prevention means anything that we can do to ensure that the adult does not get hurt or harmed or injured, or their health and well-being are not at risk. We have to do it. So prevention. So if it is water on the floor that they can slip and fall, we have to make sure we wipe the water. We have to take preventative measures. If it is a loose wire, electric wire that is in the way, they can trip on it and fall. We have to make sure we remove the wire. So prevention. So it's better to take action before harm occurs. That's prevention. So these are some of the 6 principles that underpin, that form the basis or foundation for safeguarding. And the third one is proportionality. The least intrusive response appropriate to the risk presented. Now we're talking about intrusive. Intrusive means we don't want to intrude into the life of the service user, the individual, the adult. Okay, so anything that will make intrusion less, that's least intrusive response appropriate to the risk presented, we have to take it. All these things are things that are meant to make sure the service user is safe, is free, is healthy, and their well-being is protected. Then we have protection. So we have talked about protection. Is number 4, is protection, where we support, and there is support and representation for those in greatest need. So these adults, these elderly people, we have to make sure there is maximum support for them, and there is representation. When we talk about representation, we are talking about advocacy. They have someone to speak on their behalf. They have a next of kin who can help make decisions in their interest, or they have a social worker who can represent their interest, or they have a family member who can represent their interest. So they have support and representation. That is where and how they will feel protected. It's very important. The next two, Sarah?
Yes.
Number 5 and 6.
5, partnership, local solution through service working with their communities.
Yes. And the last one?
Accountability and transparency in delivering safeguarding.
Delivering safeguarding, very good. So partnership includes different agencies in the local community working together to safeguard the service user. So you have the GP service practice, you have the district nurse, you have the social worker, you have different agencies and organizations that work together for the welfare and to safeguard the interest of the service user. And as and when the need arises, we call the police service as well. They are also part of the partnership when we think there is a risk to the individual. The CQC is also the Care Quality Commission, as and when all other sources are exhausted, they are one of the last resorts to be contacted. Okay, and accountability and transparency in ensuring that all the processes and all the procedures of safeguarding are followed in the workplace. People who don't follow should be held accountable. We'll be watching a video of some serious failings in safeguarding adults and how the people involved were brought to accountability. Any question before we continue, please? All right, let's look at these categories of abuse. These are the categories of abuse. Things keep evolving, and some categories were added to the list. They were not there before. So we have physical abuse. We're going to look at what each of them entail. Physical abuse, the person is physically abused. Domestic violence also comes under abuse. Sexual abuse, psychological abuse, financial or material abuse, modern slavery has been added to the list. Discriminatory abuse, organizational or institutional abuse. Organizational is also called institutional abuse. It's become part of the system. Then we have neglect or acts of omission. So I'm supposed to take care of the service user. I have to go and give the service user food at a particular time so that they eat their food and take their medicine. And I don't get there at that time to give them food because they have to take their medicine at a particular time. So if they are not able to have their food at the time they're supposed to have food, because I have not reached there in good time to ensure that the service user gets their food. We are talking about elderly people who cannot prepare their own food. And in some cases, some cannot feed themselves, so they have to be fed. So if the service user, the care provider or the support worker or the care worker doesn't get there in good time to provide these services, it is called neglect, or it's called acts of omission. Okay, neglect by others. Then the other one, the last one there is self-neglect. So you prepare the food for the service user and the service user refuses to eat the food. That is not neglect by others, it is self-neglect. You give the medicine to the service user, the person service user is supposed to take the medicine and he refuses, I'm not going to take the medicine, puts it on the table and did not take the medicine. It's neglect, self-neglect. Okay, so these are the main categories of abuse in health and social care. Then we have a situation where we can identify abuse. Let me ask you a question. If you are living in a house with your child or with your niece or nephew, or even with your grandma or granddad, how would you know if they have been harmed or if they are not happy about something or if they are suffering in one way or the other? How would you know? That is what we call the signs and the symptoms of abuse. So that leads us to how to identify that a service user is being abused or is at the risk of being abused. Okay, so there are a number of factors which may indicate. Now, when we go in, which we are driving and you get to the traffic light, how do you know that you need to stop or you need to get ready to stop or you need to go? How would you know? That's a question for all of us. Yes. How would you know? Did you get a question?
No, actually the voice was breaking for me. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, even I also didn't hear your question. What was the question?
Okay, so you are driving, okay, and you get to the traffic light. How would you know when you are supposed to stop or when you are supposed to be getting ready to stop and when you are supposed to go? Drive on.
By seeing the red light, we'll stop, and by seeing the green light, we'll go.
Excellent. So the red light, you mentioned, the green light, and the amber or the yellow, they are the indicators.
Yeah.
They are the things that indicate to us that, no, this is a sign, you have to stop. So in the same way, there are indicators of abuse. So when we see those signs, just like the traffic light, it tells us, no, this person is being abused. Maybe this is physical abuse. This person is going through psychological abuse, and we can pick those ones up. So these are some of the signs, the indicators. These are not all, these are just some of them. Okay, so Nina, would you please like to take us through them one by one?
Okay, I have to read this page?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So how do you know that an elderly person, an adult, is going through? There are signs that tell that a person is going through abuse.
Okay. So here it goes. There are a number of factors which may indicate abuse. The list is not exhaustive and clinical judgment is the key.
Yeah.
Missed appointments or a reluctance to submit to examinations.
Medical examinations, yes. So
Bruising.
it's a sign that, sorry, before you go on, it's a sign that maybe the person has been going through what type of abuse? Sexual abuse. Or physical abuse.
Yeah.
So they don't want to submit to examination, go to see the GP. They don't want to. Maybe the GP says, okay, can you pull the sleeve? Maybe they are afraid there are some marks there. They don't want to pull sleeves, So, and they don't go for appointment. They are afraid that something will be found out. It's just a sign. We are not saying necessarily, but there are signs that you have to explore if this person is being abused. Thank you. Please go on.
Bruising or unexplained injury.
On the body, physical abuse, there are signs of physical abuse.
Yeah. Changes in a person's mood or interactions.
Yes, so it's a sign to explore, to find out if this person is going through emotional or psychological abuse. It affects the mood, or any of the other kinds of abuse can affect the mood as well. Yes.
Yeah, changes in person, fear of another person or allowing another person to speak for them.
Yes, so sometimes if they have been abused over and over again, they don't trust anybody. So they have become afraid of people, and they get to a stage where they are afraid of going near people or people coming near them. Yes.
Okay, self-harm or increased risk-taking behaviors.
Yes, so some people also self-harm just to be able to cope with the situation. And some also take risk.
Okay, lowered self-esteem.
It's another.
Poor nutrition may indicate someone is not able to purchase food.
So that's financial abuse. They are stealing their money and they don't have enough to spend on food. It happens to elderly people a lot.
Poor personal hygiene, pressure ulcers, a direct or indirect disclosure, fear of going home.
So direct or indirect, they are able to tell you what is happening. They tell you directly, or sometimes indirectly, they are giving you a sign that, you know what, I put some money on the table, but when I came back, the money was gone. It's an indirect disclosure. It's telling you that, someone is stealing my money. Yeah. Next, please.
Fear of going home, money
Fear
or possessions going missing.
Fear of going home. There is someone who is abusing them at home. They don't want to go back there.
You don't want to go home, basically.
They don't want to go home, yes.
Money or possessions going missing.
Yes.
Inappropriate comments, behavior of other people.
Yeah, so these are some of the indicators that when you see these things in the service user, it should give you an indication that, hey, this person may be going through or maybe experiencing abuse or is at a risk of being abused. Any question or any contribution before we go on, please? So we all understand, right? Okay, so let's go on. Let's look at, so you have seen some of these indications, it makes you suspect that this person is being abused. What do you do? How do you respond to suspected abuse or disclosure? The person has told you or you suspect. These are two things we are talking about here. Suspected, there is no evidence, but you suspect because of the signs you have seen. Okay, it's not 100%, but there is some chance. And then disclosure, the person has told you by themselves, this is what is happening to me. Someone has been coming here and been touching me. So that comes under sexual abuse. Someone has been coming here and beating me, hitting me, physical abuse, or any of the categories. How would you respond to suspected abuse or disclosed abuse? Yes, Sarah. Sarah, are you there? Okay, can I take this? Right, so the first thing is when they tell you, a service user tells you, I'm being abused, or you suspect that a person is being abused. The first thing is that you don't show shock. Do not show shock or disbelief. You have to stay calm. The reason is that when you show shock, what they even hope to tell you, they may not be able to tell you because they are thinking, oh, the way he's behaving is not going to believe me, not going to believe my story. You are going to be shutting the people up. They may not talk again. So you have to be calm and be ready to listen. Then they will talk. Very, very important how to respond to suspected or disclosed abuse. The second thing is you have to listen carefully to what is being said by the adults or the elderly service user, or even in this case, children. If they are telling you, whoever the service user is, they are telling you that this happened to them, you have to be careful and listen attentively to everything they are saying. Avoid interjecting a lot, just be a listener. Because sometimes while you are asking questions, they may even forget the next thing they want to tell you. It is time to get information. So we have to be active listeners. Number 3, do not ask detailed or probing questions at the initial stage. Why? For the same reason that I gave you. If you're asking detailed questions, it may block their memory of the things that they want to download to you. So just listen to everything that they are saying. Don't ask detailed or probing questions at the initial stage. Number 4, ensure that any emergency action needed has been taken to ensure that the person is safe. For example, if it's something that has to do with the person telling you, oh, I saw somebody with a gun here. This is emergency, this is urgent. Or I saw somebody wielding a knife So you see somebody's life is at stake. Very quickly, you have to take all the emergency, steps, necessary steps. Again, it has to come under the workplace policy and procedures. Very, very important. You have to make sure you follow the workplace policy and procedures. It is important to know what a procedure is in case of such emergencies. Number 5, do not attempt to confront the alleged perpetrator. You don't do that because you are not the law, you are not the police, you are not the police officer. They may harm you as well. So you don't confront anybody.
Sorry, Grace, I was my network gone, that's why I get out.
Okay. Okay. So we're talking about how to respond to suspected abuse or disclosed abuse. We are now on point number 6. You have to,
Chris.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. When can we have a break for 5 minutes?
Okay. Do you need a break now? I can give you a break.
No,
now
like whenever you're comfortable. Maybe after completing this page, we can have a break for 5 minutes.
Yes, in 8 minutes. So after the first hour, that's in 8 minutes.
Okay, okay, got it. Like at 7, you'll give the break.
Yes, please.
Okay, because my daughter is hungry and she's getting cranky.
Okay, no, we can take a break now.
No, so it's okay. She's playing right now. Okay, so then. After that, we can. I'll go on a break for 5-7 minutes.
Okay, then that's fine.
No worries. Continue. We can continue for 8 minutes.
Thank you. So number 7, what we need to do is to demonstrate a sympathetic approach by acknowledging regret and concern that what has been reported has happened. So what a person is telling you, you acknowledge and you sympathize with them and you will show regret. I'm very sorry to hear this. I'm so sorry to hear that this has happened to you. You know, you have to be able to demonstrate and acknowledge that you sympathize with the service user. Number 7, confirm that the information will be treated seriously. Let the service user know that, oh, what you've told me, I'm going to make sure I report to the appropriate officer. You don't mention anybody's name because it may be that same person who is abusing the person. So you don't mention anybody's name. So I'll make sure I follow the procedure to ensure that the appropriate officer or authority is informed and the necessary actions are taken to investigate and get to the bottom of this case. You confirm that the information that they have given you about the abuse will be treated seriously. They need to know that. That gives them some kind of comfort and hope that it will be taken seriously. Number 8, give them that's the service user or the adults, elderly individual, information about steps that will be taken. So you let them know that, okay, this is going to be reported to the appropriate officer, it's going to be investigated, and the perpetrators action will be taken on the perpetrators. They need to know that something is going to be done, and they need to know that they will get to the bottom of this, and whoever is responsible will be held accountable. Then inform them that they will receive feedback as to the results of the concerns they have raised. Let them know that whatever happens, we will get back to you. The appropriate officer, the appropriate authority will get back to you. They need to know. So they should have some expectation of receiving a feedback of what they have reported. Very important. Then you give the person or the individual or the service user contact details so that they can report any further issues or ask questions that may arise. So this comes under empowerment. We look at empowerment earlier on. Is one of the key principles. Where is empowerment? Yeah, here is empowerment. So empowerment is where they have the contact details of who they can contact or where they can contact if they have further information or they want to speak further. And the last point there under how to respond is ensure that an appropriate person in the organization has been notified. And this is how you notify them. You write the date, you write the time, you write the name of the one who has been abused or reported that they have been abused or you suspect that they have been abused. And you give information about the details that they have given to you. You don't add your opinion to this information. You are just saying this, the service user says, everything they say is what you are going to present. You're not going to add your opinion to it. So I think these are, no, unless you are talking about your suspicion. But if it is a reported, the disclosed one, you are going to say word for word what the service user told you in your notification or in your report, depending on what the workplace policy. In some workplaces, you record written. In some workplaces, depending on the nature of the abuse, you don't record some information in the information book, because the information book is for every care worker or support worker to write in. If the one who is abusing the care worker, the service user, is one of the care workers, whatever you write there, they will see it. And so depending on what the workplace policy is, you know what to record and what not to record. Is that clear to all of us? Do we have any questions? If you have questions, when we come back from break, please, you can ask. So please, shall we take a break? Let's take a break for 10 minutes and then we'll come back to continue. Is that okay?
Okay, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's I think what's the time right now?
It's 2 minutes to 7. So we come back at 7:10. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you. Please don't leave the call, just mute yourself.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi guys.
Everyone, are we back? We will carry on with our lesson. So far, we've looked at the definition of safeguarding. We've explored the 6 principles that underpin or form the foundation and basis for safeguarding in adult care. We've looked at the various categories of abuse. You can also call them the types or the kinds of abuse that people go through. We've looked at how to identify the signs and symptoms that show that someone, in this case, an adult service user or an individual, is being abused or is at the risk of being abused. Then we looked at how to respond to your suspicion of abuse or a disclosure by a service user that they have been abused. How do you respond? And that is what we've covered so far. We're going to continue from there. Now, how do you report suspected abuse? So we already talked about how to respond to suspected abuse or disclosed abuse. Now, how do you report that you've seen that a service user has been abused or is being abused or is at the risk of being abused? How do you report it? So every workplace in the health and social care settings have their own policy and procedures. So they have their complaint policies and different procedures, particularly when it comes to safeguarding and protection. So the first thing to do when an individual, an adult service user reports to you that they've been abused or you suspect that they have been abused is, number one, you explain to the individual service user what your concerns are. Or have concerns that there are marks on your body. There are marks on your body, physical marks, you can see them. So it's a concern you have. So you are communicating. This is information sharing. You are sharing with the individual that, okay, I have some concerns. My concern that I can see some marks. Last time I came here to visit, there was no marks on your body. Now there are some visible marks on your body. These are my concerns. And then you also tell them what you intend to do. What you intend to do is to notify the appropriate authority. Now, in every workplace, there is what we call the lead safeguarding officer, LSO, or it differs from workplace to workplace. So there is always the lead safeguarding officer, the lead, that's the one, the head. Then we have deputy lead. Then we also have designated safeguarding officers, depending on what terminology any workplace or health and social care environment uses. So that designated person will be the first point of contact. If they are not available, then the deputy lead will be there or the designated safeguarding officers will be there. And those are the go-to persons according to the workplace policy and procedure. So you tell the person, I'm going to inform the appropriate authority about this. Number 2, if the abuse is putting the individual, the service user or the resident or the person's immediate safety at risk, you call 999 immediately if there is risk. So like as I'm saying, someone has a gun around, someone has a knife around, or someone is brutally, hurting and harming this person, you call 999 immediately. That is the level of urgency. Okay, this is the stage where you bypass every procedure and policy. Call 999 because the person's life is at risk. The person could die. Straight away, you call 999. For all other concerns that a service user or an individual may have or being abused or may be at the risk of harm, you speak to your local authority team. After going through the procedures of the workplace, if you think they are not working, you go to your local authority team. So we have what we call the local safeguarding team. The local safeguarding team, every local council has a local safeguarding team. They are the people responsible for all safeguarding issues within the borough or the local area. You can also use one of the following options to report. So there may be an email to follow, or there may be a phone number to call. If those don't work or you've gone beyond those ones and you think the issue is still prevailing, you are worried about potential abuse in care home or hospital or a regulated setting, maybe a daycare center or a residential home, you can report your concerns to C2C. But that is after you have followed the procedures laid out in the policy and you think they have not been actioned, because maybe the one who is supposed to action them knows about the abuse and doesn't want who the perpetrator is to be brought to account. So then you go straight to CQC, that's Care Quality Commission, and let your concerns be made known. Tell them, yes, you've done this. However, you think it's still persisting, and this person is at risk. That's why I'm bringing it to your notice. They can keep it as unanimous without declaring your name. And then a whistleblowing policy will protect you. You'll not be in danger. I have a social care staff who are worried about contacting the local council or the Care Quality Commission directly about your organization's and organizational abuse concerns. You can pass on other suspicions by contacting these numbers or whatever number the local authority has. Okay, any questions or contributions to that before we proceed? Sarah? Nina? Are we all good to go? It's clear,
yeah, good to go.
Thank you. Right, this is very important. Well, in some settings, it's called MENCAP Act, Mental Capacity Act 2005. This act is very, very important. So it's also called, with this abbreviation, MCA, Mental Capacity Act, exists to protect the rights. The first thing it protects is the rights. Please don't forget, the rights of people who may not be able to make their own decisions due to some factors which impair their mental state. So it may be as a result of stroke. If they have stroke, if the person has stroke, they may not be able to speak. You know, stroke can affect your speech, your tongue. It can. Some people have stroke, they can't speak. They want to talk, but they can't talk because stroke. And some people too, it affects their brain. And so the function of the brain is inhibited. And then some people have head injury. The head injury affects the ability to speak and to think and to be able to decide, make decisions, make choices. Some people also have learning disability. Some disabilities are invisible. You can't see them with the eyes, so they are learning disability. Some people have mental illness. And then some people also get intoxicated. They get drunk. And when they are drunk, they can't have a good judgment to make good decisions. So the Mental Capacity Act is there to protect people who fall in these categories and may not be able to make decisions concerning their own lives, health, and well-being. Okay, now, so the Mental Capacity Act is governed by 5 principles. So the first principle is called assumption, a presumption of mental capacity. We're going to explain that. A presumption of mental capacity. Now, you don't presume that someone cannot make a decision, and so you make a decision on their behalf. You never do that unless it is backed by evidence. And you know, in this country, particularly in the UK, everything has to be assessed. There should be an assessment of the situation, and there should be a report validated clearly, and the doctor has to state that this person has so-and-so, is identified as having so-and-so. If you can't see those evidences, you don't presume that this person cannot make decisions for themselves. So I am making these decisions for them. No, you'll be in danger with the law, be in trouble with the law. So that's what a Mental Capacity Act does. The first principle is a presumption of mental capacity. You don't presume. The second one is the right for individuals or service users to be supported to make their own decisions. So every service user has the right to be supported. So you don't make a decision for them just by saying, oh, I thought he was not able to say anything, so I did this. No. Have you sought support for them? That's why we have advocacy services. So you have to contact social services, you contact the person's key worker, contact social services and all relevant departments to make sure adequate support is there for the individual. Next of kin is contacted. If there is no next of kin, the system will see what is the best interest for the person. Decisions have to be in the best interest of the service user, particularly in this case, adults. That's the second principle. The third principle is the individual retains, the individual has the right to make eccentric or unwise choices. Sometimes we think we know better than other people. The thing is that the way we think is different from the way other people think. We can't expect everyone to think the way we think because we are different. We are wired differently. So we don't ever make a presumption to begin to think that this person is ill, this person is sick, and so does not know what the right thing is or cannot make the right decision. No. The Mental Capacity Act says that the individual service user who is sick, who is not well, has the right, they retain the right to make eccentric and unwise decisions or choices. No matter how unwise you think it is their right to make the choice and the decision, even if it is in their best interest. For example, let's assume somebody is ill or unwell and they take them to the hospital and they are saying that they don't want life support. They don't want the machine to be put on them. It is something they don't want. Meanwhile, medically, you see that, no, that's what is going to help save the person's life. But the person says, no, I don't want it. So it sounds like an eccentric and unwise decision. But the law is saying that it is their right. In this case, it comes between the individual and the doctor, who also has sworn oath to save life. But then, so in every situation, you look at it on its own merits. But this is the principle in relation to mental capacity. Then the fourth one is that all decisions should be made in the person's best interest. I spoke earlier on about best interest. Best interest is always taken into consideration when we are talking about vulnerable adults and people with mental capacity who come under Mental Capacity Act, or people with mental health challenges. Best interest, what is in their best interest? Is the decision you are taking in their best interest? Is in the best interest of the person? That should always be considered. All decisions should be made in the person's best interest. If it is not in their best interest, forget it. So this is the measure. And the last principle of the Mental Capacity Act is using the least restrictive intervention. You know, when we're talking about the principles of safeguarding, we look at using the least intrusive. This is intrusive, that's proportionality. But when we come to Mental Capacity Act, we are talking about using the least restrictive. The least restrictive. The person's ability to make choices and decisions should not be restricted because of their mental capacity. So you have to use the least restrictive intervention in relation to these issues. So these are the 5 key principles that underpin the Mental Capacity Act. Any questions or any contributions? Do we all understand the 5 key principles?
Can you please throw light on the last one?
The
Least
last one.
restrictive intervention.
Intervention. Okay. So the least restrictive. So let me explain the key words there. The least shouldn't be the highest. The least restrictive. Now, people with mental capacity, people come under the Mental Capacity Act. For example, people with learning disability, or people who have had stroke, or people who fall under any of these categories, and so come under the Mental Capacity Act. When we are helping to make decisions for them or on their behalf, we have to use the least restrictive intervention. What it means is that it shouldn't be very strict interventions. There should be room for flexibility, because a number of factors need to be considered. Naturally, none of us want anyone to make decisions on our behalf. Even children, it comes to a point that you see that in some decisions, they want to be involved. They want to know what you are doing for them. And you are trying to do this for them. They say, no, I want it this way. I want that. So no one naturally likes decisions to be made for them. And that is why for people who come under the Mental Capacity Act, either because of mental health illnesses or learning disability or any of these categories, when we are dealing with issues that pertain to their health, their well-being, and safeguarding, we should use the least restrictive interventions. We should be very flexible in considering all the factors that have to do with them and the issues at stake. Does that explain it further, Nina?
Yes, Chris, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a good question. So how do we ensure access to capacity? So this is mental capacity. We are saying that the individual doesn't have the capacity to make a decision or to make choices. And so support has to be sought for them in making the decisions and the choices. So how do we assess capacity? The Act, that's the Mental Capacity Act 2005, makes use of a functional test of capacity. So the capacity of the service user has to be tested first. It is adapted from the common law, which focuses on the decision-making process itself. So the person's mental capacity and the person's capacity to make a decision or make a choice needs to be tested first. Then first, it must be established that the person being assessed has an impairment. Okay, the person has an impairment. So the impairment may have to do with maybe their hearing, their vision, or their brain, mental faculties. They can't think to make a decision. They can't hear what you are saying. They can't talk back to you, or they can't even write what they are thinking. If they can't talk, you give them a writing. There are a number of times I go to the hospital to visit patients, and some of them, because of the procedure they are going through, they can't talk, or because of the situation, but then they have a writing pad. Even though they can't talk, they can write. So you have to, this is where the last question that you asked, the least restrictive intervention comes into play. We have to be flexible to make sure we explore everything possible before we take a decision on their behalf. So if they can't talk, give them a writing tool. They can write what they are thinking. If they can't write, you explore other avenues until the decision is made. So, the person being assessed, it should be established that the person has an impairment, which makes it difficult for the person to make a decision or make a choice or indicate what they are thinking. So the impairment will be an impairment, or it may be a disturbance in the functioning of the mind. The person's mind is disturbed mentally or medically or naturally, so the brain can't function well, which affects their ability to make a decision in relation to the question at stake. All these have to be established, and there should be evidence. So the next thing is that under the Mental Capacity Act, a person is regarded as being unable to make a decision if at the time the decision needs to be made, he or she is unable to, one, 4 things to consider. One, the person is unable to understand the information that is relevant to the decision that will be taken on their behalf. Maybe it's a medical situation and the person has to be given blood. The person has to receive blood, infused blood, to help save the person's life. And the information being communicated, the person can't hear, the person can't understand. The doctors or whoever next of kin who would take the decision for the person must be able to establish that this person does not understand the information that we are conveying to him or her in the hospital bed concerning this situation. It should be established. Number two, it should also be established that the person is not able to retain the information that is relevant to the decision. The first one is understand the information. Number two, keep the information. So he is not able to work with the information you are giving him or her. And number three, it should be established that the person is unable to use or weigh the information. This is the third one. One, understand the information, not able to understand the information. Number two, not able to keep or retain the information. Number three, not able to use the information to make a decision or weigh the information to see the advantages and disadvantages of the decisions that is being made. And the last one there is the person is not able to communicate the decision by any means, either by verbal means or by written means, or any electronic device whereby they can communicate what they are thinking. This has to be established before making a decision in the best interest of the service user. Is that clear enough? Generally, people don't think that we confront situations like this, but they happen every now and then in the hospital and in the care homes. Sometimes it may have to do with the person's will. The person is at the point of death, end of life, and they have a will. They want to change their will, or something has to be done. It may also have to do with something that has to do with their decision concerning the end of life, whether they should be buried when they die or whether they should be cremated when they die. Are you following? So different decisions that elderly or adults need to take. And when it comes to that stage, this is the procedure. Yeah? Okay. We have the prevent strategy and the prevent agenda. I don't know, are you all familiar with prevent? It is part of safeguarding. And the prevent strategy and the prevent agenda is handled by the Home Office directly, the UK Home Office. So the prevent strategy aims to stop people from becoming terrorists or supporting terrorists. It prevents people from becoming terrorists or prevent them from supporting terrorists. So the health sector is involved in what we call the Objective 2 and Objective 3 of the prevent strategy. And it is the first aim is to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism or ensure that they are given appropriate advice and support about anything they don't understand, which might be a possible avenue to draw them into terrorism. To work with sectors and institutions where there are risks of radicalization that we need to address. And sometimes this is important because sometimes vulnerable children and adults can easily be lured into such, and that is why it is important. Prevent is part of existing safeguarding responsibilities for health and for the health sector. It is not an additional job. It's already there. It's enshrined in the responsibilities. Healthcare workers have the opportunity to refer vulnerable individuals for support in a pre-criminal space. How do we do it? We do it by, number one, recognizing vulnerable adults and vulnerable children and young people who may be at risk of being radicalized. You identify, you recognize that if you see any signs. The second one is We healthcare workers are supposed to work in partnership with other professionals to reduce the risk and also to protect individuals who may be radicalized or influenced into terrorism. The third one is we have the responsibility to provide adequate and necessary support as part of proportionate multi-agency, because we work with different other agencies within the local community. Multi-agency response to any concerns that may be raised. So a parent may have concerns that their child is being radicalized, and they may report to you, the care worker or the support worker or the social worker. So what do? You have to follow the appropriate procedures and policies and make sure that is notified to the agencies that we work in partnership with, so that that child or that individual is protected and prevented. Okay, so there are vulnerability factors. So that's the third one. Under the prevent, there are vulnerability factors. Radicalization is a process. It's not a one-off event. It starts from a point. It starts from a point, and then ends somewhere. So that's the first factor of vulnerability. Sometimes they lure the children, they give them money, they promise them things, or the individuals. There is no single profile of a terrorist. There's no single profile. You can't say that, okay, terrorists do this, terrorists do this. No, different things are emerging. So there is no checklist to measure someone against to see that, okay, this person can become a terrorist or this person can be influenced into terrorism. You can't see any checklist like that. So this is not about race, and it's not about religion, and it's not about ethnicity. The program is meant to prevent the exploitation of people who are susceptible to being lured or influenced. And every healthcare worker must understand this. Okay. So these are some of the things that get people lured into terrorism and terrorist activities. So the engagement, then the intent, and then the capability. So these are some of the engagement, the things that trigger the influence. So when people have feelings of grievance and injustice, they have a grievance to settle. They think that they have been treated unfairly, and they think that they need to hit back. Okay, so that's one of them. Feeling under threat. Sometimes people also, these are deduced from people who have been involved. Okay, when people feel they are under threat, they feel they need to fight back. A need for identity, meaning, and belonging. So sometimes young people particularly have a need for identity. They want to identify with something. They have a need to find meaning for their lives or something that they are living for. They have the need to feel belonged to something, a group or something. That is another thing. Then the desire for status, a desire for excitement and adventure also leads people into engaging with such activities, and need to dominate and control other people. And there is the susceptibility to indoctrination. Some people are susceptible. They are prone to being indoctrinated, okay, given some teachings that are extreme. There is also the desire for political or moral change. It also makes people commit acts of terrorism. Opportunistic involvement. Some people just get involved because the opportunity opens itself. Then some people are also influenced by their families or their friends to get involved in terrorism. Some people they are at a transitional time in their lives and they feel, okay, this is the next thing to do. Being influenced or controlled by a group. Relevant mental health issues also are factors. What is the intent most of the time? Over identification with a group or with an ideology makes people decide to do that. Then there is the them and the us factor. Them, they, and we as factor, where there is division in the community, in the society, where people begin to think, no, these people are more privileged and these people are putting us under pressure. Then as the them and us thinking, dehumanization of the enemy, the desire to dehumanize the enemy, the one that is considered as enemy, attitudes that justify offense or offending, harmful means, harmful what? Means to an end. Some people think it's a means to an end, and then there are harmful objectives. So the capacities that the individual, when people have individual knowledge of something, also gives them the capacity to get involved in that. Individual capacity, skill and competence, access to networks and funding or equipment gives people the capacity to get involved in these and also perpetrate these acts. And it's also an aspect of safeguarding, like we said. So that's all part of the prevent agenda. Right, so when we are at the end of this, when you recognize, how do you call it? You come to that point of identifying people who are vulnerable. Next thing to do is you recognize, you understand, and you share your concerns. So you could reduce the risk of someone being exploited or by radicalizers and subsequently drawn into terrorism-related activities. So you recognize, you understand it, and then you share your concerns. You don't keep it to yourself, share with appropriate others. So how to report it? You report any prevent-related concerns. Every local area has different contact details of people to be contacted and the areas to be reported to. And so you need to find out which one is related to your local area that you live in, the UK particularly. Then there is also a further guidance. The links here also provide relevant information. Let's look at these case studies. Sarah, would you like to take this first case study for us on this slide? Everything here, one after the other. Sarah, are you there? Okay, if Sarah can't see or read, Nina, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Harry is 78 years old and lives alone in a flat. His daughter Elaine is very worried about him. He has always been a heavy drinker, but recently she feels he has worsened. She has seen bottles and rubbish strewn over the flat. Her dad looks very thin, and she has observed injuries to his face. She thinks are from falls. He refuses to let her take him to the hospital, which was her plan. His daughter, upset and anxious, calls social services, who advises her to phone Harry's GP practice and discuss her concern. What are the safeguarding concerns and risks? What can the practice do?
Good. Thank you very much for reading. So let's think through this for 1 minute and let's discuss it. I want all of us to discuss it together, and we can point out some concerns. The last question, what can the practice do, means what would you do as a practitioner? Okay, if you are confronted with this issue, what would you do? But the first thing is, what are the safeguarding concerns and risks for Harry? That is the service user, the adult service user. So let's think it through for 1 minute and let's respond. Okay, so what do you think are the safeguarding concerns and risks for Harry? Harry is the service user, the adult service user. And let's assume that Harry is living in a care home, or maybe he's living in his own home and is having a 24-hour care, okay? And the daughter who is not living with her comes to visit, either in the care home or residential home or in Harry's own home where he's receiving care, and finds that Harry has some injuries on the face. All right, yes, so let's have some response. Naina, what do you think? What do you think are the safeguarding concerns? After that, Sarah, will share your thoughts.
So safeguarding concern, basically, you mean like to reach the conclusion after seeing his situation?
Yes. So what do you think are the main things that will give you a concern about whether he is at risk of abuse, whereby
he must
you
be
would want to
at the
safeguard him?
risk, or since it's mentioned in the first line that, 1 second.
Okay. So Harry is the service user. Elaine.
Yeah,
is
so since
the
it's
daughter.
mentioned that he's alone and seeing his condition that he was already a heavy drinker.
Good.
So I don't think that it can be a case of physical abuse. It could be something that he's going through mentally, and then he could have hurted himself.
Okay.
Because it's very much, I mean, it's my observation. It's very much mentioned that he's alone in the flat at this age. So what I feel that if a person is already addicted to drinking and he's alone, so quite possibly he could have hurted himself on his own, or due to some mental challenges he might be facing, maybe extreme sense of loneliness.
Okay.
What I feel after seeing this situation, and he doesn't want to discuss that thing with his own daughter. All
right. Very good analysis. Thank you. So from the first line, we see he's alone. He lives alone in a flat. So it could be a flat in a very sheltered residential home. It could also be a flat in the community. But it's clear, like you have said, he lives alone. And because he's an adult, he receives care. He's someone who is in receipt of what? Health and social care services. Okay. So you have said that it may be possible he hurt himself as a result of all of those things you mentioned. Thank you very much. Good analysis. Sarah? Sarah, can you hear? Yeah, okay. What do you think might be the safeguarding concerns for Harry?
Yes, sir.
From this scenario, yeah. Look at the case study. What do you think will be the safeguarding concerns and the risk factors for Harry? You need some time to go through? We have 12 minutes to finish. Okay, so let's look at some because of time. So one of the concerns is that because Harry lives alone, he has high chances of being abused, considering his age. He's old. There are high chances of him being abused. Some of the factors that make that possible is that he's a heavy drinker. If he drinks and he becomes drunk, he can leave money anywhere. When care workers and support workers come to take care of him, they can steal off him without knowing because he's drunk. Okay? And when he's drunk and they are stealing off him and he sees that maybe someone is taking his thing, he might want to fight back in that drunken state. And then whoever is there at the time might also fight back. And that might result in him being what? Hurt or injured. That's a possibility. We are just exploring the risk factors. Another risk factor is that it says the daughter, Elaine, has seen bottles and rubbish thrown over the flat. So bottles and rubbish thrown. Who threw them? Was it Harry himself who threw them? Or there was a fight and they were thrown? So that's another thing. You can't tell who was involved in throwing those things. Her dad looks very thin. Very thin means he may not be eating well. Okay, his diet is in question. So sometimes, is it that he doesn't have money to buy the food or for the food to be prepared for him by the support workers? Is it possible that they are stealing off him so he doesn't have money to buy the food? She has observed injuries on his face, which she thinks, so she's thinking very neutrally, are from falls. Maybe he fell. And then she decides to take him to the hospital. Now he refuses to go to the hospital, which was her plan initially. So the question is this: why does he refuse to go to the hospital? Does he think something will be found out? Like we looked at earlier on, his daughter was upset, anxious, and now calls the social services, who advised her to phone Harry's GP practice and discuss the concerns. Okay, so you have picked up this concerns. What would you do as a practitioner? And what do you think the GP practice would do? So this is a very clear safeguarding issue. Sometimes you might not think about it like that, but adults, elderly people go through a lot of things that raise a lot of safeguarding concerns. What do you think? Right, so let me get your thoughts on this, and then we'll conclude with this slide. So what we can do as health and social care workers is to ensure that people are trained in safeguarding. All staff might be training what? Safeguarding, to know the possible risks that adult service users find themselves in. So care workers, healthcare practitioners must be very aware. So training and awareness must be created. And that's the responsibility of the employer. And the responsibility of the employees to also make sure they undertake training to know what to do. Then patients and service users must have information. They must be empowered to know what to do when they feel they are being abused. Maybe someone is stealing off them, someone is abusing them physically, sexually, or in any way. They should know what to do, information. Then they must be able to ask questions of things they don't understand. And then there must be reviews when we observe things concerning them. For example, in Harry's case, I think Harry's personal circumstances and care package must be reviewed. Now he's alone, he's a heavy drinker. So does he need to, if he's living in a flat alone, then he should be moving to the nursing home. So that review here, the reviews here would consider reviewing his care package. It's not good for Harry alone to be living alone any further. He could fall, no one will know until a care worker comes. So it's better to review his care package with assessment, and advice should be followed to move into a care home, which is in his best interest. Then follow up non-attenders, repeat prescriptions for those who are on prescription and those who have medical appointment. If they don't attend the appointment, they have to be followed up, because there may be a reason why they don't want to go. For example, when the doctor called, he refuses to go to the hospital. You see, so there may be a reason for that. Carers policy, we have to know what the policy of the workplace is, and we have to follow it accordingly. Flag records of vulnerable adults. Adults who are very vulnerable in the community, their record must be flagged. They have to be visited by the health visitors. They have to be visited by the social worker, and they have to be assessed from time to time. Discuss concerns and significant events with relevant others. Whatever you observe, if you were a care worker and you visited Harry and you saw these things, you would need to discuss your concerns and the event that you observe there with your line manager. And then you have to contribute to meetings that are held in relation to safeguarding. So these are some of the relevant things that as practitioners, we have to do. And the agencies and care providers also have to ensure that we are doing. Okay, any question? All right, so to conclude this slide and this teaching, this session, these are some of the things that every care agency, be it a care home, a nursing home, a hospital, daycare center, must have. It is mandatory. Every health and social care setting, even schools, they come under this. One, they must have safeguarding adult policies, where it is schools, it is child protection policy. Okay, so safeguarding adult policy, safeguarding adult lead. I was telling you about safeguarding lead. That is the designated safeguarding lead, the one to be contacted if there is a safeguarding concern. Then see the child behind the vulnerable adults. When people are vulnerable, sometimes they behave like children. They don't behave like particularly adults. They don't behave like adults. Sometimes their sense of maturity is gone. They begin to think like children. And that is why you as the healthcare worker must be able to take relevant decisions that help them. Then, so you have to see the child behind the vulnerable adults. Highlight records of vulnerable adults within the locality. Information must be available for them. Regular training must be given to staff. Significant events must be reviewed and discussed. Like Harry's event must be reviewed by whichever agency is responsible for providing care and support for Harry. Then concerns must be shared with the local community. Application of Mental Capacity Act to practice. The Mental Capacity Act must be applied in practicality, where the service user comes under a category of people who fall under Mental Capacity Act. Minimum safety criteria for staff employment must be checked. For example, the agency must, or the care home must ensure they don't employ criminals. You have to undertake DBS check. That's minimum safety criteria for staff employment. You have to make sure that you are not employing staff who will be criminals who will come in and abuse the service users. Very important. Complaint and whistleblowing policy must be there to protect those who flag up more practices and institutional abuses at the workplace. This is the plenary summary of the things that we need to take note of, our takeaway. It is not your responsibility to decide whether an adult at risk is being abused. No, it's not our responsibility. Ours is just to identify and report. It is not our responsibility to decide and say, no, this person is being abused, because it may not be what you see. It is our responsibility to report abuse of an adult at risk if you have any concerns. It's our responsibility to report. It's not our responsibility to decide. That will be done through investigation. Ours is to report when you have concerns or it's been disclosed to you. Then safeguarding adults from abuse is everyone's business. It is everybody's responsibility. It's not the responsibility of social services or the social worker. It is not only the responsibility of the police service. No, it is everybody's responsibility, including you. Whatever you see, you can call and report, and the necessary actions will be taken. Even if you see someone being abused in the street, it is your responsibility to call 999 reports. So safeguarding anywhere, everywhere, particularly where we are working, it's everybody's responsibility. Please do not ignore your concerns. If you have concerns, let the abuse of an adult at risk. If you ignore it, you will let it continue. But if you report it, actions will be taken, perpetrators will be held accountable. And don't forget to apply the Mental Capacity Act principles that we have talked about. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the first session on safeguarding adults. Any question? Any contribution?
No,
Okay.
Chris, good for today. I
Yes.
just wanted to ask, like in the beginning when you showed us the LOs,
Yes.
so how many LOs we have covered today?
We have covered learning outcome 1.
So
We have
one, all
covered-
the points, 1.6.
We have covered part of learning outcome 2. We have covered part of learning outcome 3, implementation of policies and procedures. We have talked about Mental Capacity Act. And we have covered learning outcome 4, understand Mental Capacity Act. We have to look at consent.
Okay, so we have covered randomly.
We have covered a wide range. And our next lesson will look at the other aspects. Yeah.
Okay, so on Wednesday, we'll be continuing with this unit, or we'll be taking up some assignments
On
or
Wednesday,
questions based on this.
okay, thank you. So on Wednesday, the first thing we're going to do, as you rightly advised, is we're going to do the Harvard system of referencing. That is important because you need to be referencing in your assignment. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do on Wednesday. When we finish and there is time, we will continue with this unit.
Okay, so basically
okay?
we won't be discussing any questions and assignment on
If
Wednesday.
you have a question on the line, yeah, we can look at it, but it's best we finish teaching and then we look at all the questions all together.
Okay.
But I will go through the questions while we continue, but we are not going to start answering the questions now because you need to have the
Yeah, because like according to my suggestion,
yes.
it's better since this is a long unit, we can
Yeah.
complete the whole unit study part.
Good.
And then we can go on the assignment, whatever writing part is there.
That is the best way. I agree with you. And that's how I plan to go according to it.
Even though it's quite big, but I think that would be fine.
Yeah.
Because because we already have to finish the 3 modules also, like before. I don't know about others, like I haven't submitted yet.
Okay, work hard at it. We are flexible and ready to support you, but keep it going gradually, okay?
Yeah, because I don't want to pile up. I can see that the units, along with time, the units are becoming tougher and tougher.
Yeah. So, but we'll get there. If you need any help, just let me know. Yeah, with any question.
So we are done for today?
We're done for today. And thank you for coming. Thank you for your contributions and your participation. We appreciate you as always. Yeah. So Mansi will send these to you tomorrow. And there will be another PowerPoint for the next session on Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah
and
Nina. It's been a joy having you here. And thank you to our facilitator who is facilitating on the other side. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Chris.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.